Yeah, I just don't think the current approach is working. So we need to do more, and there's a huge gain that these people make through the rezoning of, residential, and the benefit they get from having these massive developments. They need to be giving something back. So I just feel really strongly that an ODP won't work because, as we've seen, you just apply for a consent. And what the issue we've got in the city is we're allowing far too much development without any requirement to deal with the associated costs to the environment, to the traffic infrastructure, or to the community infrastructure. So we need to have a mechanism that actually gives us something back. I was interested in your designation process. You see the Crown have done that through the central city. They don't have money for half of it. They've just come in and designated it, and people will have to comply, and, So using that process, could we do that as part of the integrated traffic assessment for these developments, that we put a designation on, and they have to, if they want to develop that site, provide those facilities?
Yeah, that's definitely an option. That would provide the site, but not necessarily the funding to do that. And that's the issue with that option, if we do it alone. And the issue with Riccarton is, yes, Westfield obviously own a large amount of the Riccarton Commercial Centre, but they only own one side of the road, the south side of Riccarton Road. You've also got the commercial development on the north side of Riccarton Road, where AA is and Kathmandu was. You've got the Windmill Centre. You've got a whole lot of other landowners in that area. We can provide a great facility on Westfield's land, but a whole lot of all the other landowners are going to benefit from that as well. And so there is a Westfield will say, well, it's unfair that all the cost of providing a public transport interchange is borne by us when all these other businesses are benefiting from the fact that people can now catch a bus more easily to Riccarton. So it's about trying to find a way that everyone can share the costs equally rather than just imposing it on one developer.
But if the mall wasn't there and you just had the normal shops that you currently have, surely the bus infrastructure would be, sufficient. I mean, the reason you need to provide an integrated transport place is because of the demand that the mall has created to go into that area. So, I can't imagine that you'd want to have a really big bus terminal if you just had the existing old businesses down Riccarton Road, because of the way it's, because basically you've got the consolidation, if you like, of retail into a very confined space within Riccarton, as opposed to a whole way along the length of the road.
Sure, the mall is a big generator of the demand, but it's not 100% generator of the demand. And so the mall should obviously contribute its fair share, but we can't expect it to contribute 100% when other people are benefiting.
That's the effect it has.
It doesn't, and doesn't contribute any, so we end up doing it via the rest of the public who actually don't get the same degree of benefit as the mall do. And it doesn't matter whether it's Riccarton or Northlands or Palms or any major shopping centre. Yeah.
Just to finish that train of thought, I wasn't aware that if we designate, we have to provide the funding. I thought if we designate on a site, the option is for the developer to actually provide that they can do so in accordance. Like if you think what we've been told with the central city, like the Forsyth Bar building, that's designated, but they cannot do activities that are inconsistent with the minister's designation. So yeah, just talk me through how that could happen here.
Yeah, so the same issues happen in the central city. The CERA have designated a whole lot of sites, but then they've had to go and buy those properties. Yes. So it's been a cost to government, and CERA, and obviously through the cost sharing agreement, we're contributing to some of the costs of those anchor projects. Not the landowner isn't. Obviously, I mean, all the convention site, for example, has all been sold to CERA, and it's CERA, the government, and obviously us contributing that as funding that, rather than the landowner that used to own that land contributing to the cost.
What we've been told is if you have a designation on your site, you have to get consent from the minister to do anything on that site. That's correct. And that it doesn't mean that if you do an activity that's consistent with the designation, then that's fine. That's what I don't understand.
Yeah. So there's two things To designate, you have to be have financial responsibility for the work. So, for example, public transport, you are responsible providing the physical place for the buses to stop. ECAN has a role as well in terms of the network and so on. So you can designate, there's no difficulty about that. When you designate a piece of land, you're quite correct, is that the designation means that nobody can do anything that is inconsistent with that designation, and they certainly can't do anything unless they have your approval to do it. The third thing with designations is that when you designate, you are in some respects removing the development rights from that person who owns the land, and there is immediately a compensation or purchase requirement comes along with that designation. So that's how designations work.
To the point where there is no way through the district plan that we can actually get to the point of having insisting on really good public transport landings in key activity centres, except in new ones, which is probably limited to one.
Yeah, the issue of trying to retrospectively put things into places is difficult. What we're suggesting to you is that we're not disagreeing with the where you want to get to, it's how you get to it in the best way, and we're saying two ways to give some certainty: either the designation, which tells people exactly where you're going, and it actually puts a cost onto council to do something about it, or you do the outline development plan approach, which again tells everybody exactly where the facility is going to go, and then that allows those other mechanisms, whether they're financial contributions or development contributions, to come in. What we're saying is, at the moment, without us having a plan inserted into the district plan that says this is where it's going, this is how we're going to do it, to rely on someone coming with a resource consent just because they've got X amount of floor space is not going to get us to where we want to get to. So that's the nub of it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Paul. Oh, sorry, and then Jimmy.
Yeah. There seems to be, though, to me, we're talking key activity centres and actually where these commercial businesses are allowed to set up, and I'll just use the example of the central city. Seems to be the rules around what has to happen in the central city are very inconsistent with what happens in the suburban key activity centres when it comes to parking, access, and all those variations that they seem to be allowed to do anything they like in some of the suburban areas, which has always been to the detriment of the central city. So 2,500 car parks in Westfield. There is no restriction of roads getting to those car parks, and yet in the central city we're making it hard for cars to get in, hard to park, and I would like to see a one rule applies. So when you making and creating restrictions for these key activity centres, that they are applied in the same manner right across the city. So one is not being given benefit over the other. And I wonder how we can achieve that, because I remember a few years back talking about the one rule applies, and I used a scenario where what the council was trying to do at that stage was radically reduce inner city parking. And I asked them at that point, have you approached the suburban centres and asked them to reduce their parking by 2/3 and move the other third one block away? And the comment then was, yes, we have. And I said, how did that go? Out came the lawyers. So I just think there needs to be some thought given to that, because we can't afford to destroy one over the other. And I think they are all of relevant importance.
Thank you. Noted. Just, yes, noted, and that we really need to, if we're going to take this approach for one suburban centre where we're looking for a comprehensive approach to public transport and public space in these areas, then you're quite correct that we should be looking at them as in a whole.
I suppose it's because, I mean, we do want to keep people safe, and my personal view is it's far more dangerous driving down Main North Road to Northlands, or to down Riccarton Road to Westfield. As a pedestrian, I would hate to try and cross those roads, and so it would be good to try and improve the amenity. And of course that would bring into line what Yanni's talking about, this infrastructure around the public transport. And I do think that these large centres have a massive responsibility. They are the creator of this traffic problem because the fact that it's easy to get to and there's tons of parking.
Correct.
And I think they do need to give back, and we know that they are all looking and are making provision to expand in a much larger way than they currently are at the moment. So with that in mind, they haven't finished expanding, and we have an opportunity to take one step to make them provide for this public transport, so we can actually look at reducing their parking requirements.
Yeah, let's respond to that. 3 minutes. So the integrated transport assessments that we discussed yesterday, we are ensuring that with new developments, they will look at all modes, not just traffic, which was what the previous city plan just focused on. They'll look at public transport and cycling and walking. So we will ensure that through new developments, there'll be much more consideration made to these issues. I think the issue that you're maybe trying to suggest is that the previous development that's gone on should have paid more consideration to those modes, and I totally agree.
Yep.
The issue is that in the past that we can't be retrospective, that was consented, and as much as we'd like to be able to say you should have done things differently, all we can look at now is look at the future growth that they're doing and how much that will impact on public transport and walking and cycling, and how much we can get development contributions, as Mark suggested, from that future growth. We can't, unfortunately, retrospectively do anything with the existing situation, and that's just...
It is just the cumulative effect.
Yeah.
It's when they expand, what we want is a requirement that kicks in. If they're already a certain scale that's causing us problems and they're going to get bigger, then there needs to be a trigger that they have to provide, X amount of space for public transport.
Correct. And that's exactly what we're saying is for the larger developments, you'll have the integrated transport assessment, and if we have in our plan where these facilities are to go, then we can actually, as part of the integrated transport assessment, say, and how are you providing for the public transport? It's meant to be here, we've shown it in the plan. How does your development link into that? So the two things have got to go together. What we're saying, it's very hard to have these things when you don't know where the facility is going to go.
But we do know.
If we know, for example...
If you do know, that's fine, yes.
If we know that Riccarton, for example, is likely to expand down Clarence Street,
Yep.
can we insist that they provide some decent public transport infrastructure near to their mall for public use?
To do so would require provisions in the district plan to take financial contributions to offset, but those financial contributions and the rules to take that land or money needs to be attributed directly to the impacts of that development.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you can only take it for the incremental impact, not for the retrospective, right?
That's
okay.
right.
I see the problem. Okay, Jimmy.
Thank you. I'm just interested in hearing about a bit more how this can be done retrospectively and like the outline development plan. And I guess the case in point though is the Barrington Mall at Athelston Street. And previously the buses actually went through part of the car park, which was really nice. And then more cars were wanted by the mall, and so the buses are excluded. So council having to find a small exchange or hub outside, and that has its NIMBY problems too. But I just think it's unfortunate that, for example, when the community board asked the mall owners about even a little piece of land for the bus to come in, sadly they were laughed at. And I just think in terms how we can require mall owners to actually play their part rather than just rely on the dominance of the automobile, thinking that that's the only way our city can function. And so it just seemed to me that you have referred to a way that perhaps the outline development plans could be applied to existing centres. I just wondered how that could, and maybe especially, but also though in conjunction with the Public Works Act.
Correct. Yes, and that's what Mark's options say is you can use a number of things to get you to the end result. Relying on one is not going to get you there. So
we can ask for all those things to go into the plan.
That's what we'd come back to you with. Yes.
Yeah.
Do that for phase two.
I think a lot of us would strongly support.
Yeah, I
doing what we
think
could.
in terms, what we'd do is an undertaking to see whether we could bring back to you as part of phase two the outline development plans for the for the centres, showing where the public transport, and I understand, you've obviously got very clear ideas for some of the centres where that's to go. So that might be quite an easy task for some.
And that's done in conjunction with ECAM.
Correct, yes.
The problem is, if we wait to phase 2, these places will expand in the meantime, and we've lost the opportunity. They only expand once every, 5, 10 years, Paul? You would know.
Yeah, 7 years.
7 years?
For an upgrade.
So, we kind of get one chance to do it now because of post-earthquake and future plans. So I still cannot understand why we can't require, and the government's changing the rules around DCs, as I understand it.
They are.
And I don't know when that change is coming in. There's what they call development agreements. So I'm really interested, because I think that's fundamentally, it's quite a good approach, that you have an individual negotiation with the developer over, if you want to develop, here's the contribution.
Correct. And
so if we had something in our district plan that said, as part of the development agreement, there as a minimum must be X, for developments over this size, there must be X amount of space put aside for public transport as part of that development agreement, that would be something I would see as being really important. But I don't know when that law change is coming in, and I don't know how much thinking we've done around what does that mean in terms of district plan.
There may be a mechanism around the amount of car parking they have. So we could say that 20% of car parking, there should be an amount put aside for going towards public transport. So if they've got 2,500 car parks, the cost of those 2,500 car parks, that could be set aside into a funding model. I'm just thinking a wee bit sort of laterally here.
Yep.
And I'm assuming that you can't do that retrospectively
Correct. So you could only do it for new
for
development?
new developments.
Yes.
So
But
as anything expanded, if they were required to provide additional car parks,
Yes.
then we could put not only a car park, but a bus set down
Correct.
minimum.
Yes.
And I'm assuming we do that with we must do that with tourist accommodation and things, do we?
We've got loading space requirements, which
You could have a trigger.
for hotels and things, but that's really for buses that are coming just to that site. What we're really talking about is buses, obviously, for Riccarton, for example, going along Riccarton Road, and not necessarily coming onto their land.
But you could actually have a trigger. So you could have, say, like 2,402 car parks triggers a percentage you put aside.
Except that we know that the people who get off there, we know the percentage who are going to shop at Riccarton Mall, and it's very high.
Oh, yeah.
But mainly because they've done that work for that bus exchange stuff. So we do know that
Yes.
people getting off there are actually shopping in their facilities.
Yeah, we could put something in the district plan. I think my recommendation would be put it as an assessment matter rather than a particular rule.
Yeah.
The issue with the rule is that you can say to a landowner, you need to provide X amount of space, and they say, oh, that's fine, well, we've got some dead space around the back here, here's your area, and it's not functional for where the public transport network. So it would have to work very closely with them to
So
get a
what's
best-
your
a best
recommendation of the best way of achieving what we clearly want to achieve, either at Barrington or wherever? 'Cause I can't believe that buses had to make way for cars. Like, that seems completely unfair, completely contra to where we're trying to get to.
Something has to be in the plan, assessment in the plan again.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
It's basically what I'm saying with the central city. The buses do the cars do give way for the buses have priority, but it seems the complete reverse in the suburbs.
So from the staff point of view, Madam Chair, our recommendation would be that this is something we bring back to you definitely in phase 2, which would be outline development plans for each of the areas. There would be assessment matters within the integrated assessment provision, so that would capture your bigger developments. We can capture those. And then the third part of that, is we've just talked about, is the financial contributions, which match up with the development contributions issue. And that really needs to come as a package to you.
Okay. And
That's
I
our
guess
recommendation.
in terms of the next year, the only one that's going to be impacted in big terms is the Meadowlands one, which looks like it's sort of developed this very well anyway.
Yes, so the new one for the new Hallsville area,
Yeah.
Meadowlands, we've got that.
Yeah.
That's done.
Mm.